Welcome back to Story Deep Dive. Y'all, we are over here ready to kick off our first official podcast of Story Deep Dive and tell you all about ourselves and what we're doing. But for the record, if you are watching this on YouTube, I feel like I look like a 90s B-boy. Like I'm about to turn some one and twos and not talk about no book. Y'all, this is the struggle bus that
We
Dana
should be
is
so
on
lucky
today.
to hear those beats get dropped. I'm just saying.
They're gonna be saying, "What is she doing?" I got my Erica Badu hair wrap on. If you are not watching the video, maybe you should. But it's all good. It's all good. It's all good because we're here. So, with that said, you are about to kick it with us for a little bit, and then we're going to talk about our first selection. But first, since this is our first podcast, we'd love to, like, I guess, start off with introductions. So, Rach, did you want to go first? And then we will bring it around and talk about the podcast and our first book selection.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hello everyone. I am Rachel Arsenault. I run a little outfit called Story Cipher. I specialize in crime and fantasy novels specifically, and I write on Substack and I stream on Twitch. That's all you need to know. Dana, tell the people about yourself. Your list is way longer. Like your list of stuff that you do is way longer than mine. So tell the people what you do. Tell them what they want to know.
I feel like this is going to be the most giggly podcast. Y'all, we have had a week. We've had a week. After we do the introductions, we'll talk about the week. So my name is Dana Pittman. I'm a USA Today bestselling author. I'm a developmental editor, and I am the chief storyteller at Danger Tales. I don't know about the list being longer. Today, my brain is fried. Because we are on the heels of closing out the holiday season and starting a new year. So that is always like from here until February is like a nonstop for me. But help fantasy and romance authors write addictive novels. Our goal is to help them to build profitable writing and publishing businesses and to find a balance between writing what they love and what readers want to read. And so our topic of talking about books is because Rachel and I are friends, like for real, for real. So she knows how much I love books. So this discussion of what we're reading and how we believe the books that we are talking about can really help authors get inspiration and to sit at the feet of some amazing authors for different reasons, right? Because I think this month's selection is on one spectrum and next month's selection is on another spectrum, but they both do the same thing. And so before we get into talking about our selection, what do you have going on right now over at Story Cipher?
Well, I'm thinking that I should have really beefed up my bio, my pitch. I'm like, I help crime and fantasy writers write novels. I play video games on the internet. So on my list of to-dos is to beef up the old Story Cipher bio.
Okay,
uh,
you did the tweet version. It's like, okay, in and out. All right, cool stuff.
I know. I panicked and I was like, "Oh, what do I do for a living?" And then I gave y'all the short version. So if you want to know more, you can check me out at storycipher.me, okay? So what do we got going on? Well, yes, I'm like you closing out the holidays, which has been a mad dash that last week. We've been recording podcasts. We just wrapped up recording an interview with you for my paid Substack subscribers, where we talk about mysteries that aren't in a crime setting, which I think is really interesting because most of the time when I talk about mysteries, I talk about crime because that's the most common expression of a mystery story, and it's kind of what people most often think of. But mysteries can take all kinds of forms, and there's such a great way to layer in intrigue and narrative drive to your story. So we had a really great conversation about that. I've got some long form posts coming up, and the crime writers, I'm sorry, I got to get the title right. The Complete Crime Writers Workbook has gone live, and so we're trying to get to the end, wrapping up some client work so I can spend a little time without my key light shining directly into my eyes. That's really what we're after.
Yeah, I mean, that's not too much to ask for. Let's see. Over here, the end of the year has been different this year. Like we always sort of start the reflection of the end of our acad I don't want to call it an academic year, but now I feel like it's that way because we sort of close out one year and we start another year. And because we're starting to plan content in quarterly pockets, it makes it so that I feel like I've been planning quarter one for the past 2 quarters.
There's a gnat flying around in my office, and I can't quite tell if he landed in my coffee, and I'm too scared to take the risk, so I'm just gonna set it aside.
I'm so done already. Oh my
I know
God.
we're barely 5 minutes into this podcast, and I'm like, there might be a bug in my drink. This is brace yourselves, dear listener, dear viewer. It's gonna be like this all the time. So you
Oh
just
my
know,
God.
okay?
I promise it'll be worth it. And so, at the
Closing out
beginning
the
of
year.
at the beginning of December, we had our virtual retreat for all of our students across all of our programs. And so that was a good nod towards like closing out the year, but then looking at the calendar and solidifying the beginning of the year. And then and so that and just one-on-ones and speaking to all the students about how the year went and what were some of their accomplishments and what are they looking forward to next year and reviewing like their upcoming series. It's always one of those things of a real on one hand, it grounds you on what you feel like you need to do next. But the other one is just like, I just feel like I have a whole lot of proud mama moments where it's just like, oh, I'm so proud of you. I need some other words. I need other words, but I do. I feel really proud and I love when that those accomplishments come with other things other than you did a good job, right? Like they see other metrics like reader reviews coming back, feedback coming back from their editors, like all of those things. And so right now, even though I feel like my brain is exhausted, it's for a good reason. And then now, working on this podcast, trying to be a tech girl, not really pulling it off. I thought I wanted a little color. I had to get my little Badu-ism to feel like I was about to hit an A and B selection. And then I had to put on these headphones. So y'all listen, your girl's on the struggle bus, but it's all good. I think this is also like when you have these moments, it's the joy of having like your own editing practice, right? Of like, this is what you do. You don't spend your time. It seems like we spend a lot of time in front of the camera, but you probably spend a lot more time behind the scenes reading and, being very, very comfortable because you're going to be sitting for a long time. And so this will be a great opportunity to sort of mash those worlds and, um, and I'm having fun even though it's been a doozy of a week. I'm having a great time. So with that said, we decided to come together and create this podcast. And I will let you guys know, this is our intro. This is the first time you're hearing us. This is why all the giggles and grins are, you get those for free. You get to see the evidence of a friendship, but also people who work together professionally, even though separately, that we support each other. And we talk about books a lot. I would love for you, Rachel, to talk a little bit about how you use reading as a part of your process, because I think both of us, we met through an editing program, and both of us sort of latched on to how we would use um, books to aid our clients in their development. For me, it was like really, it's a part of every single program and teaching them how to read like a writer, even down to having sessions about how do you annotate and how do you go back and mine your notes for information. And you do something that's similar. I'd love to hear a little bit about that before we get to our selection, because I think this is one of those times that gets skipped over. You hear read more, read wide, read in your genre, read things, that are not in your genre. But not a lot of people take the time to say, what does that mean? And I hope that we have an opportunity to explore that. But yeah, like how does that look when you are working with clients and you are on the subject of reading more, but in under the scope of inspiration and getting better at your craft in writing?
Yeah, yeah. I think, you really, it's impossible for me, I feel like, to overstate the benefits of reading as a writer. Now, the trick is, and that's part of the reason that we started this podcast, is like, how do you actually do that? Like, it's one thing to be like, you should read more and you should read in your genre, but to not know what you're looking for, can sometimes mean that you're just kind of like reading stuff and then you're like, okay, check, I did it, I guess. So when I'm working with my clients, so I work with crime and fantasy clients, and I think about reading as, I would say, maybe like three pillars of benefit. So one, absolutely inspiration. I think that appreciating the work of others is a really important part of any creative practice. Like, just being able to enjoy great work produced by other people, it's I think that it's important for, as a participant in this case in the literary space, and I think that it's useful to open up your mind to see what's possible, right? Like to see how someone else's mind put together a story and to get your own wheels turning of like, well, how would I have done it, or what would I have done differently, or it just sometimes sparking fresh ideas that are like, kind of pinging off another person's work and kind of spinning out into your own, sort of universe of ideas. So that's number one. I think inspiration and participation in your genre, in literature as a whole. But then also from a genre perspective of what are readers looking for out of this genre? What are the essentials in this particular type of story? So for crime, right, I'm wanting to show my clients the patterns of a crime story, how a crime story works, what kind of rules essentially they need to play by so that their readers feel like they're playing fair with them. And then for fantasy, the way that fantasy works is going to be a little bit different because we're looking at plot types or styles, because fantasy is not a plot driven marketing genre, right? So crime is a plot oriented marketing genre. Fantasy is not. And so you're looking at what you're wanting to do is find stories that have similar plot, I'm going to say styles for lack of a better word, um, that you can kind of begin to figure out how to build your plot, raise your stakes, right? And follow through so that it is satisfying and engaging. And then lastly, that third pillar I think of as like, style, right? So you're looking for authors that, so then this is why reading so important is because you're looking for styles that speak to you, I think. Styles that represent the kinds of stories you want to tell, the way you want your stories to feel, even the kind of prose that you like, whether you like something a little more prosaic, whether you like something a little more restrained, whether you tend toward literary or more genre fiction. Reading allows you to make contact with different ways of expressing stories so that you can begin to discover what works for you, what you like, and what you want to write. And then you have people to learn from because you found that out. And so all three of those are really the way that I use reading with my clients. And so we'll pick books, we will read them together. It's like one of my favorite parts of working with clients is getting to read books with them and then come together and talk about them and talk about what worked for them, what didn't work for them, what are we learning from this book, how can we translate what we've learned into your current work in progress. And I think that this podcast gives us the opportunity to sort of do that on a little bit broader of a scale. Is
Hmm.
there anything else that you want to say about how you like to use books with your clients?
Yes, I would say, I think you all will learn real quick. Like we are yin and yang. Like we're on the opposite ends, but somehow very much similar. And I would say that yours feels a lot more technical than sometimes mine does. And it may be because most of my clients are romance clients. And so a lot of our structure is the same or similar approach. And so what I find is looking at different stories to see how different tropes are used, how do you make it flow to fit the things that you're talking about, the style that, and then for us, it's tone, it's, how do you utilize intimacy? And at the end of the day, um, I have people that I'm working with that have many books under their belt and some that have none under their belt, and most of them are indie published. So our turnaround time is different, our learning time is different, but as someone who started as a reader, I think I always bring that to the table. It's really at the end of the day, what are readers expecting and how can you exceed that expectation? And what does it look like for you? And so, it's more about the biggest thing is like letting clients know, like, this is for inspiration, but it only takes them like one book club or one book to say, oh wow, I've never done this before. But to me, I always say, like, you have this great opportunity to sit at the feet of some of the best writers ever. Now, for me, that's not always like the classics. Like other people, I got some ratchet up in there, Uh, but at the end of the day, there are still readers that are looking for what they want in those genres. And so you can pick and you can choose and you could almost create like this recipe of you. And also there are times where we were reading certain things to help you get out of your comfort zone, which is what our first books club selection did for me. And I personally love reading, ping-ponging in and out because it helps me both as an editor, but and as a writer, because there's nothing like somebody doing something you're like, what? Like, and you get that next snap back. It's like, wait a minute. Wait, let me go back and read a couple pages. I missed something. And either that or a book like the book that we chose for this month, knowing that it's a book that you could read again and again and again and still get something. A tip, or I guess a note that I will add, if this is the first time that you're experiencing a conversation like this, I'm not saying we are the only ones that do it, but I think people rarely have conversations like this. So it's almost like be patient, hold my purse. You know what I'm saying? Just watch us do what we're about to do. But also be patient with yourself because it is like you have to turn off something to turn on something. And so once you start, it's almost like you can't stop. Like when you start knowing how story flow goes and you go watch a movie, you know what's coming up. And everybody hates you because you know what the ending's going to be. And so, but I think beginning to spot those elements and then being able to compare those same elements across multiple books or multiple genres, then you really become in awe of story itself. And all the other things are just essentially the paints that the artist chose to use, the words that the artist chose to use. And that's when you, like old school, that's when you cooking with Crisco. You know what I'm saying? This is when you're getting it in. So, and so I would say be patient with yourself. Also, as we're going along, you're going to see things that we don't see, and we're going to see things that you don't see. And that's where being in community to do it is helpful because seeing it through someone else's eyes may give you insight on something that you have going on with your story. And so there's that. And I think the final thing is being patient because usually, if you find a book that you really want to do this with, you need to read it two, three, four, five, six times. So I always tell my clients to pick a story that you know you can read a million times and not get tired of it. Like my books, like in I can read them a million times. And I need to read it again. You ain't say nothing but a word. And so, finding books that help you and that you want to continue to read to really sharpen this skill, because it is a skill. And when you sharpen that tool and then challenge yourself to bring it to your computer or bring it to the page, you will be on fire. And so, and I think it makes you just that much more in love with the craft of storytelling, no matter how you choose to do it. And so I think you get the technical aspect, but you also get the heart aspect. And then you get the thing where you're not in total isolation from the people who will consume your art, right? Consume your stories. And so, with that said, let's transition into talking a little bit about our selection. And to start us off, we have a list. Who doesn't have a reading list? But we have a list. And so our plan is to sort of ping pong where we take turns selecting books. Y'all, we have to take turns because Rachel's selections, if you're not watching the video, my face looked like, yes, yeah, that's how my face looked. But Rachel's selections, I was like, girl, I need that. Give me that book 5 months in advance. But, but we take turns. We do look for books that we believe that will get a lot of I don't want to say staying power. I'm sure you can give me a better word, but we can really explore different angles and different elements, and not just the core elements of story, but whether it's characters or in this one talking about timelines and talking about agency, like whatever we decide to dig into, so that it isn't a conversation that stops because you don't read this genre or you don't write this genre. Our hope is that because we do come from different areas and our personal likes are even different, but we've won each other over with quite a few of our books, I would say. But because we are sort of in different lanes but riding on a parallel track, that I feel like it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if this is not the area that you write in. I think everyone can learn something from the books that we've selected. Even if some of them, I hope, is just about the chandelier swinging. Listen,
In that case, we're gonna learn how to write a good juicy sex scene. And
come
who doesn't
on.
want that?
Come on. I want to see how red Rachel's face can get. I want to see.
Definitely check out the video version of the podcast for our romance selections as I try to stay comfortable talking about juicy sex scenes. I should have chose a different word. I don't like the word juicy. I would
Just
take it back. Just take it back. Take it back. Never mind.
it's out there. It's out there. So when you see the selection, keep an open mind is what I'm saying, because we believe that you can get something out of it, even if that's not the genre you write or the genre you read. And I have found that sometimes it's the genres that you don't read that give you the most because you are desensitized to what you're experiencing. Do you have anything to add on that, Rachel? Just our
No,
selections and
yeah, no, I think you really hit it on the head. And I just think that, you know, reading broadly, like just like you said, reading inside of your genre is important, but I think keeping an open mind outside of your genre really is important as well, because it does allow you to look from a different perspective. And again, I even just think from the perspective of appreciating an art form that differs from yours is really valuable. And I just want to say that I feel like that's something that I have learned being in relationship with you, because I am showing up with my taste in books, with my particular bend toward whatever the heck it is that you would call my taste in books, and coming in and getting introduced to romance as a genre, not being familiar with it, not understanding like how it works or why people read it, or really, I mean, coming in very, very blind and coming to understand the opportunities that exist in the genre and the kinds of, the kinds of plots that romance novels will focus on and the kinds of issues that they have the opportunity to explore. And that has really broadened my perspective of stories as a whole, as well as enabled me to appreciate many different kinds of stories. And as an editor, as a storyteller, as a story consumer, I think that that's just, it's important to be able to appreciate those things. And so we have absolutely tried to pick books that even if it's not your thing, you can get something out of. And so hanging with us through the different selections. And I think this is such a good opportunity to challenge yourself inside and outside of your genre, because basically what we're going to be giving you are reading picks that you can grab, and then you're going to read something that's either inside or way outside your genre, and then you get to come and hang out with us and talk about it. So it's sort of like a safe opportunity to explore outside your genre, because you have someone who's going to kind of guide you through the process. And I think not only is it valuable, I'm a little biased because I think because Dana and I have a lot of fun, but I think you can have a lot of fun and enjoy the process and the experience as well.
I agree. Most, I would say probably 99% of our selections will have both audiobook and physical books, and of course ebooks. Well, I mean, well, I'm not gonna say of course because we do have one that doesn't have an
The
ebook
1%
already.
is definitely going to come from me. The 1% that's like, this is a weird, obscure title that only comes in hardback. It's mine.
Yeah,
It's mine every time. Just bring, it's just no, it's my pick.
Rachel be trying to test my gangster because I'd be like, listen, Linda, listen, what are we doing? So but so we do try to find books that have audiobooks. Not everyone, but I personally, whenever doing book club selections, do like it because I know that people are busy, and I'd rather you read the book in any way that you can, because communicating what we're talking about in a book is different than when you communicate it in any other form of entertainment, right? Whether you're talking about movies or video or short whatever. So we do try to have selections that have audiobooks. And I would just say that as we move forward, feel free to comment. Yeah, at the time of this recording, we don't know where, but we're certain that it's gonna
There will
be
be somewhere
somewhere.
you can. It's going to be somewhere. So
And you're
surely
gonna
there's a
love it.
comment feature. You can smash that like button, maybe. Smash that subscribe
Smash.
button, maybe. But there's probably a comment section somewhere in there too.
Yeah, we're gonna get it together. We're gonna get it together.
So
Oh, okay.
professional.
Listen, we're super. You know what I'm saying? But we did read those books, though. You know what I
We
mean?
sure did.
Nerds,
And the
nerds on deck.
conversations we're going to have about them are going to be top notch. So
Fire. So, comment. Let us know some books that you recommend. We have quite a few lined up so that we are able to fit this in with our schedule and to bring it in. So, with that said, before we get to talking about the selection, this will be, I guess, I want to maybe talk about our schedule. Um, that this will be roughly a 4 week sort of schedule. We'll introduce you to the book and some of our thoughts before we get into reading it, and then we'll have an episode around the plot. Um, we'll have an episode around the characters and character or characters, depending on the book, and also sort of have a wrap up, like an editor's take of some of the high points, the takeaways in each one of the episodes. And I really have a feeling we'll get better and better. So the more we get better, I think the more you'll be able to really appreciate it. But I think you're gonna get some fire in this one because this is a good pick. But it's that as we go through it, we are pointing out things that we believe would be helpful to writers who want to do something that is same or similar. No one is going to be exactly like it. No one is saying copy. We're saying inspiration, but it also can challenge you. One of the things that we didn't talk about, I think, towards the top of this podcast, this episode, when it came to why we like doing this is the fact of like this is for inspiration. And I think it's a thing of like it's as if you're holding up, an item. Let's say you're holding up a pencil and you have the opportunity to look at it from all these different angles, and from the top and from the left and from the right and from the bottom. And so when we're going through this process, it's beginning to ask yourself questions. Well, what if you did this? And what are some things that you should consider about your character? And what are some things that you need to consider in your plot if you want to play with this element? And to me, that makes it so that you're going to be running either to pick up your phone and take down some notes or write some notes down. And I think that's when it's going to make it even more fun because you get the opportunity to look at it from a different angle. And I believe, because I know it does for me as a writer, to spark things that are like gaps in your understanding of your own story. And so I'm looking forward to that as well. So we'll have those four, so essentially, we'll spend a month in a book, and then every now and again, depending on how many weeks it is in the month, we'll have some Q&A sessions. So if you have questions about the books that we're reading, why we read it a certain way, or recommendations, reach out. Our communities will also be chiming in. Rachel's community on Substack, my community in both Substack and school, to give us questions as well. And I want it to be fun. Y'all gonna get all the laughs. You get that for free. Um, but it's gonna be fun, but it also can just be an opportunity, almost like a master class, because we're learning from some of the greats. Whether again it's something that you would have chosen or not, you really can walk away with something that's pretty fire. So I'm looking forward to that. Anything else that you want to add before we go into the topic of our selection?
I don't think we should leave the people in suspense any longer because we have been dancing around this first selection and Rachel and her weird ass taste and all that good stuff. So sorry, I'm gonna get us the explicit tag. This is what
And it was her. You see that? They would have thought it was me. So go ahead and well, I think you should tell what the selection is, since I managed to butcher the name every single episode. And then that way we can start off on a good foot.
All right. Well, this month's selection is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This book is one of my favorite books of all time. It is, for me personally, the perfect book.
Mm.
It is, um, so like if I think about what epitomizes my taste in stories, this book is that. It's just this book has everything. Cue the Bill Hader meme if you guys have seen SNL. This place has everything. Uh,
Listen, you saying that and my original objections to this book had me so concerned for you. I'm just gonna say, but go ahead.
this is I described this to Dana as like this is so I exist in two equal but opposite sides. So I love a good romance novel. Anne of Green Gables is my other favorite book of all time. And then there's this other side of me that Ninth House is my other favorite book of all time, and I listen to metal and I like EDM. So this is the many facets of me. So
Layers.
layers, yes, I'm a complex character. So but this book, so this is one of my favorite books of all time. And I've studied it with both fantasy and crime writers. And that's one of the reasons that I chose it, is because it does blend crime and fantasy both. And since I decided that I couldn't be bothered to pick a niche, and I just took my two favorite things and decided I'd specialize in both of them, finding books that combine both of those things is I both find really enjoyable and incredibly useful, because it's a great lesson in fantasy, and we won't even scratch the surface of the plot and the characters, because this book is so rich in so many different aspects. So we don't even touch the fact that it is a gorgeous use of a soft magic system, but fantasy writers pick this one up if you're trying to pull off a soft magic system. If your magic system is a little bit more mysterious, if it doesn't have hard and fast rules, this is a great book to look at because she uses it expertly without ever feeling like the lack of rules allows her to cheat. But also, I have all of my crime writers read this book as well because it is a well executed crime story, and because it does have that fantasy element, it really innovates the crime story by using the fantasy elements to add a really unique spin to the crime story itself. And so, it just so happened that I recommended this book to Dana, and I tried to warn her. I was like, Dana, listen, this is one of those other Rachel books. Okay, this is one of those. This is
I
the
wasn't
other
ready.
side of me. And yeah, poor Dana just wasn't ready. So why don't I hit you guys with a quick summary, just so you, if you haven't read the book yet, just get a little warm up into the book. When Alex Stern, a troubled young woman with an uncanny ability to see ghosts, is discovered by the magical underground, she is enrolled into Yale University on a full ride and inducted into a secret society that monitors other secret societies that specialize in different forms of magic. This gritty tale has murder, mystery, and intrigue that explores the thirst for knowledge, justice, and the price we are willing to pay for power. So on that high note, I think, because this doesn't even this summary, it's a decent summary. It doesn't even cover the half of what we experience in this book. Dana, tell me a little bit about, your thoughts about the book and what you're looking forward to digging into as we go into our episodes moving forward.
I will first say that if this is not your bag, you're okay. You're in good company. But towards the end, I absolutely loved this book. I will say that if you have not read something like this before, be patient with yourself. This is a great book to do an audiobook, but I did find that I did ping pong between audio and the physical book. And then once it started going, like I was all the way in. And I listen, all the stuff, the soft magic and all that, I still think all of it was shenanigans and bananas. It was all of the things and then some. My like the heart of what I took away is like really going on Alex's journey. Um, Leigh Bardugo. Did I say it right this time?
You
Oh my
nailed
God,
it.
I'm getting every time I
Close.
stop and say, did I say it right? I feel like she just created a character and a world that is just so layered and multifaceted, and it's almost as if you could never go into the depths of it. I think it also is a great story if you're someone who loves to do things that feels like a genre mash, because you do get to see not just those elements of crime, the elements of fantasy, the elements of mystery, the way she builds the characters. You see, I believe, a slow, super slow. How slow can we get? Burn love story.
So
And
good.
it's really very masterful in that it just captures your attention. And man, oh man, does this woman know how to do twists. Like we didn't even like there's so many things that we were not able to discuss in this, but she just she uses moments where you just think you know it's happening and bam. She sucker punches you a real fast. She hits you with the 1-2 and you better learn how to duck. And so I think it makes it so that it is a well-rounded read. And I'm not gonna lie, it took me a minute to get into it, and y'all will hear more about that, so I don't lie about that. And there was many a times where I called Rachel or I was texting her like, girl, what you got me reading? Because it was, listen, it took a minute. But one of the things also that I love is that it's one of those stories that is covering really deep topics, or I always call like touchy subjects. And she does it in such a way that it's like, it's sensitive, but it's almost as if you can't separate it and you don't want the conversation to stop. it's I gotta have better words for it, but she does such a great job of that. And I also feel like that is something that happens a lot in romance too, right? Like we get to explore these themes, and that the story is just this vehicle to talk about things without feeling preachy, but to bring people's awareness to something that is important. The final thing that I feel like this story does so well is her ability to tell a story that feels both modern and also aged. I don't have a better word. Like it feels contemporary, but it also feels like it could have been set in another time. And and I think that for me, for clients who are fantasy writers, is sometimes really hard now. Of like, where do you want your story set, and how does that affect the type of story you want to tell? And I think she did a beautiful job. The fact that she used buildings and places that stand right now if you go to the campus, but she just sort of folded it in her imagination and it's on the page. And so there's so much about this. It's like literally we could talk about this one book for a year. So we just have to thug it out and make it happen. And so I look forward to our conversations and also having conversations with people who are like me. You wouldn't have picked this book in a million years. I wouldn't have picked this book in a million years. But I'm so glad. I'm so glad you forced me. That you
You're
held
welcome.
held our friendship over my head. That
Things that never happened, ladies and gentlemen. Let the court record show that that never happened. I am looking around for the court stenographer, like, ma'am, did you get that? That never happened. Okay, I would like that struck from the record.
Listen, Claire Huxtable used to say, "Let the record show." Girl, I know that's before your time. Let the record show. Maybe she used to swing that finger too. But no, I'm so glad we do, and I think this is going to be. It's a fun kickoff to this podcast. Um, It is something that is both formal and informal in our discussion. And I really think that's going to be pretty dope is just seeing how over time the podcast evolves and how we have other stories to sort of weave in and out of these conversations because I know these characters and these situations are going to come back. And maybe this popped in my head and I'm wrong for doing it on like on a hotline, but I'm just going to do it. I think like you could do like a master class or something like, oh my gosh. And so now I've been suckered, y'all. This is me trying to get sympathy. I'm being suckered into reading the next book, even though we don't even know if there's a third book or a fourth book.
I mean, we know that there's a third book. We don't know if that's the end of the trilogy or the end of the series. I say trilogy, assuming that
See?
that's the end, but we don't know. And you know what? You're so welcome for suckering you into it because you had a great time. We had a great conversation, and there's so much more good conversation to be had. You are very welcome.
I'm not gonna give her props. I'm gonna be salty for a little bit longer because I was like, I know I'm scary. I know you scary. How you pick this book? So with
It's
that
my itchy
said,
side.
girl, listen, I'm like, do I know this girl? Look, let me give her a good eye. No. So with that said, everyone, buckle up and welcome to Story Deep Dive with Rachel and Dana. As we move along, I'm sure we're gonna have a fancy intro and a fancy closer, and we may not, because as long as you know where we are and where to find us, we're gonna keep it cracking. But this is a great opportunity to get the book or grab the audio book, or it's popular enough that you can go to your library and look for it. And if this is your kind of story or you are have a story in your mind that sort of mixes reality and paranormal and ghosts and magic and um
Murder.
murder and fish out of water and everything else that you listen, pull up to the table and get ready to have a great time. Any final words before we close out this episode, Rachel?
The last thing I do want to say is, and I put this on just kind of anything whenever I'm talking about this book, there is some potentially sensitive content in the book. So if you are concerned, you can look at the trigger warning database for the book Ninth House for more information. Um, just I don't want to catch anybody off guard knowing that we don't actually deal with any of those topics really in the course of our conversation, but if you're going to read the book, it might be helpful to know if that's a concern for you. So I do like to add that little caveat, but otherwise we're grateful that you're listening and coming along for the ride. This is honestly just a sneak peek into our editors' brains, and how we look at stories. And also, honestly, a sneak peek into our friendship, because this is pretty much what it's like all the time. And so we're happy to have you here. We're excited for where this journey is going to take us, and we can't wait to have you along with us.
And along with the trigger, well, I don't want to call it trigger warning, but it's essentially what it is. I think also you can listen to this conversation in this podcast having not read the book,
Yeah.
because we do talk about it generally. But if you have read it, I think not only will you want to go back and read it, that you may go back and read it and listen to these conversations again. And so yeah, so don't feel pressure because it's a nice size but read. It's a nice size chunky read. And but I found that once I started and it really started rolling, you can't stop. It is one of those kind of reads, but you can listen to these without having read it and still get a lot and find yourself taking notes. So that's something else. But with that said, yes, you will be getting an insight into our friendship and sisterhood and what we absolutely love about books and what we love about helping writers to write the stories that they've always wanted to tell. And this is just the beginning. So, like I said, buckle up, join us on this weekly podcast called Story Deep Dive with Dana and Rachel. And we will see you in the next episode where we will be talking about the plot in Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. Y'all, if I stop every single time, just know because I'm trying to get it right. I'm trying to get it right. And with that said, your girls are out. Have a fantastic day. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode. Goodbye.